My name is Clara, and 18 months ago my daughter looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, you embarrass me. Could you please not wear your uniform when you visit? People might misunderstand." Last Tuesday, she walked into my drawing room carrying a gift basket, nervous and eager to make a good impression on her new boss's wife. When I turned around, she went pale. Because her new boss's wife was me. She stammered something about coincidence, about not knowing. Her hands were shaking as she tried to explain why she was there, how honored she was to work for the Harrington family, how she'd do anything to prove herself worthy. I let her finish. Then I smiled, the kind of smile that holds years of swallowed pride, and said, "Welcome to the family business, Maya. You once told me I embarrassed you. Now you'll learn what grace looks like." She covered her mouth, tears spilling over. "I don't deserve this." I nodded once. "No, you don't. But neither did I deserve your shame. You see, revenge doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just opens the door and lets people walk into the life they said you'd never have. Have you ever been made to feel small by someone you'd die for? Stay with me, because this story will show you that sometimes the most elegant revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. I was never supposed to be a single mother. When Maya's father left us, she was barely 3. I made a promise to myself and to her. She would never feel the sting of poverty the way I had as a child. She would have opportunities, education, a chance to be more than her circumstances. For 15 years I kept that promise. I worked double shifts at the diner, cleaned offices on weekends, took in sewing when the bills got too high. Maya never went without. Not school supplies, not birthday parties, not the designer backpack she begged for in 8th grade because everyone else has one. I gave her everything I never had, including the belief that she deserved better than the life I could provide. When she got the scholarship to Whitmore University, full ride, academic excellence, I cried in the grocery store parking lot. My baby girl, the first in our family to go to college, surrounded by the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and complained about their trust funds. I was so proud, so naive. The housekeeping job at the Harrington estate came at the perfect time. Maya's scholarship covered tuition, but not living expenses, not the 1,000 little costs that separate scholarship kids from legacy students. The Harringtons paid well, better than anywhere else I'd worked. It was honest work, dignified work. I took pride in making their marble floors gleam, in arranging flowers that cost more than my monthly rent, in ensuring every surface reflected the kind of perfection money could buy. Maya knew about the job, of course. First, she seemed proud too. "Mom, you're working for the Harringtons. They're like famous. Their parties are in the society pages." But something changed during her sophomore year. Maybe it was her new friends, girls named Sloane and Tiffany who spoke in that particular cadence of inherited wealth. Maybe it was the boy she started dating, whose family owned half of downtown. Or maybe it was just the slow realization that while she could dress the part, her mother was still the help. The first sign was subtle. When I'd visit campus, she'd meet me 3 blocks away from her dorm. "It's easier," she'd say. "Less crowded." Then came the request. Could I not mention where I worked? Could I maybe dress differently when I came to see her? "It's not that I'm ashamed," she'd insist, her voice bright and brittle. "I just don't want people to get the wrong idea about us." The wrong idea. As if love and sacrifice were somehow shameful. But I understood. Or I told myself I did. She was young, finding her place in a world that had never been meant for people like us. Could be patient. I could be small if that's what she needed. I thought I was protecting her by staying invisible. I had no idea I was teaching her that I was something to hide from. And that lesson would come back to haunt us both. The breaking point came at her graduation dinner. Not the ceremony. I was allowed at that, sitting in the back row like a distant relative. But the dinner afterward, hosted by the parents of one of her sorority sisters at an exclusive country club. Maya had been nervous for weeks. "Mom, this is really important. These people, they could help with job connections, networking. You understand, right? I understood that she wanted me there but wished she didn't. The country club was everything I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, waiters in white gloves, the kind of understated luxury that whispers rather than shouts. I'd worn my best dress, the navy one I'd bought for her high school graduation. It was modest, appropriate. But the moment we walked in, I could see Maya's face change. Her sorority sister's mother, a woman named Patricia with perfectly blown-out hair and a smile like expensive porcelain, swept over to us. "Maya, darling. And this must be." "This is Clara," Maya said quickly. "Not my mother. Just Clara." Patricia's eyes did that quick scan wealthy women perfect, taking in my dress, my shoes, my hands that no amount of lotion could completely soften. "How lovely. And what do you do, Clara?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Maya jumped in. "She's in domestic management." Domestic management. As if being a housekeeper was something that needed translation. The dinner was torture. Maya seated me at a table in the back with the other family friends, people who clearly didn't belong to the inner circle. I watched my daughter laugh and charm, fitting seamlessly into a world that had no place for me. When someone asked about her family, she spoke about her late father and her independent mother, who had always encouraged her to reach for more. Independent. As if I'd chosen to raise her alone. As if working 3 jobs was a lifestyle choice. After dinner, as we waited for the valet to bring my 10-year-old Honda around, Maya finally looked at me directly. "Mom, I need to ask you something." "Of course. When I start my new job next month, could you maybe not visit me at the office? At least not in your work clothes." My heart stopped. My work clothes. You know what I mean. The uniform. Just, these people I'll be working with, they're very image conscious. And I don't want them to get the wrong impression. "What impression would that be, Maya?" She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "That I come from. That we're poor. Different." I stared at this stranger wearing my daughter's face. This young woman I'd sacrificed everything for, who was now asking me to sacrifice my dignity too. "Maya, do you know what I do at the Harrington house?" "You clean." "I maintain a 30-room mansion. I coordinate with caterers and florists for events that cost more than most people make in a year. I manage a staff of 12 people. I ensure that one of the most prominent families in the state can live their lives without worrying about a single domestic detail." She shifted uncomfortably. "I know, but it embarrasses you." "Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder for who, Maya?" "For you. Because it's been pretty hard for me too, watching my daughter pretend I don't exist." The valet brought my car around. As I reached for the door handle, Maya grabbed my arm. "I love you, Mom. You know that, right? This isn't about love." I looked at her, really looked at her. At the girl I'd raised to be strong, independent, proud. The girl who was now asking me to be invisible. "No, sweetheart. It's not about love. It's about shame. And the saddest part is, you're ashamed of the wrong person." I drove home that night with tears I refused to let fall. Because crying would mean accepting that this was who we'd become. Comment below. Have you ever been made to feel ashamed of who you are by someone you love? Because what happened next taught me that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we've loved too much. I had no idea that within a year, shame would become the least of Maya's problems. The Monday after Maya's graduation dinner, I walked into the Harrington mansion feeling like a ghost of myself. I'd been working there for 3 years, but that morning everything looked different. The marble floors I polished weren't just surfaces. They were mirrors reflecting a woman I barely recognized. Someone small, apologetic, invisible. Thomas Harrington found me in the library, dusting books that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Clara, are you all right? You seem distant today." I looked up, surprised. In 3 years, our interactions had been polite but professional. He was kind, always said please and thank you, never left messes for me to clean up out of carelessness. But we didn't have conversations. "I'm fine, Mr. Harrington. Just tired." He studied my face with the kind of attention I wasn't used to receiving. "You know, I've been meaning to tell you. The way you arranged the flowers for last week's dinner party was extraordinary. My guests couldn't stop commenting on them." Something in his voice made me pause. It wasn't the casual praise employers sometimes give. It was genuine. "Thank you. I used to help my grandmother with her garden when I was young. She taught you well." He smiled, and I noticed for the first time that his eyes crinkled when he did. Would you mind showing me? I've been trying to revive the rose garden, but I'm afraid I lack the touch." That's how it started. Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with dirt under our fingernails and conversations about pruning techniques. Thomas had lost his wife 5 years earlier to cancer. The house, he told me, had felt like a mausoleum ever since. Margaret loved this place. She made it alive. After she died, I kept everything exactly as she'd left it, thinking that would preserve her somehow. But all I preserved was emptiness. We worked in the garden every afternoon for weeks. He'd ask about my life, and slowly I found myself talking. About Maya, about the dreams I'd put aside, about the loneliness that comes from loving someone who's outgrown you. "She's ashamed of me," I admitted one day, my hands deep in soil. "Then she's a fool," he said simply. I looked up, startled by the firmness in his voice. "Clara, in the 5 years since Margaret died, this house has been maintained by a dozen different housekeepers. None of them lasted more than 6 months. Do you know why you're different?" I shook my head. "Because you don't just clean this house. You care for it. You notice when the orchids need repotting, when the silver is tarnishing, when the staff is overwhelmed. You see what needs to be done and you do it, not because it's your job, but because you understand that a home is more than just a building." His words hit something deep inside me that had been dormant for years. Your daughter doesn't see your worth because she's been taught to measure value by the wrong standards. But I see it. Every day I see it. That night I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. Not at the uniform or the tired eyes or the hands that showed their work. I looked at the woman who had raised a brilliant daughter, who had kept a family together through sheer will, who had turned a house into a home for people who barely knew her name. I saw someone worth knowing. The shift between Thomas and me was gradual, then sudden. Conversations over coffee became dinners in the kitchen after the staff had gone home. Shared books became shared silences that felt comfortable instead of empty. He courted me the way men used to court women, with attention, with respect, with the understanding that love is built on foundation, not just feeling. "I know this is complicated," he said one evening as we sat in the garden we'd restored together. "I know people will talk. I know your daughter might not understand. My daughter stopped trying to understand me a long time ago. But you still love her. I'll always love her. But I won't keep shrinking myself to fit into her idea of who I should be." When Thomas proposed, 6 months after that first conversation in the library, I said yes without hesitation. Not because he was wealthy, though he was. Not because marrying him would solve my problems, though it would. I said yes because he saw me, all of me, and he chose me anyway. The wedding was small, private. Just us and a few close friends. I didn't tell Maya. How could I? She'd made it clear that my life was something to be hidden. But secrets, I was about to learn, have a way of revealing themselves at the most perfect moments. I didn't plan for Maya to work for Thomas. That was pure, beautiful coincidence. 3 months after our wedding, Thomas mentioned over breakfast that he was hiring a new project coordinator for his development company. Someone young, ambitious. Fresh perspective on the downtown revitalization project. I was reading the morning paper, comfortable in my silk robe, coffee growing cold as I absorbed my new reality. Mrs. Clara Harrington. Still felt like playing dress-up. "What kind of background are you looking for?" "Business degree, preferably with some urban planning coursework. Someone who understands both the financial and social aspects of community development." Something cold settled in my stomach. Maya had majored in business with a minor in urban studies. She'd been job hunting for months, sending out resumes to every development firm in the state. How many applicants do you have? 43 so far. My assistant is scheduling interviews for next week. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Thomas, I need to tell you something about Maya. I explained everything. The shame, the distance, the way she'd asked me to become invisible. Thomas listened without interruption, his face growing more serious with each detail. She applied for the position, he said finally. What? Maya Warren. I remember the name because it's similar to yours. Clara Warren, now Harrington. I thought it was an interesting coincidence. My heart was racing. You can't hire her because she's my daughter. I won't hire her because she's your daughter. But I also won't not hire her for the same reason. If she's the best candidate, she gets the job. And if she is. He reached across the table and took my hand. Then we'll handle it with grace. The way we handle everything else. 2 weeks later, Thomas came home with a decision. She got the job. I felt everything at once. Pride, terror, anticipation, dread. She was exceptional in the interview. Brilliant, actually. She has ideas about affordable housing integration that could revolutionize how we approach development. She earned this position. Does she know about us? Well, she knows she'll be working directly with me, but she hasn't asked about my personal life. Why would she? I walked to the window, looking out at the garden Thomas and I had restored together. In a few days, Maya would walk into this house, not as my daughter visiting her embarrassing mother, but as an employee meeting her boss's wife. What do you want to do? Thomas asked gently. I thought about all the times she'd asked me to be smaller, quieter, less visible. All the times I'd complied because I thought that's what love looked like. I want to let her discover the truth naturally. And then I want to see if she's learned anything about grace. The plan wasn't elaborate because it didn't need to be. Sometimes the most powerful revelations come from simply existing in your truth and letting others stumble into it. Maya's first day was scheduled for a Tuesday. Thomas suggested she come to the house that afternoon to meet his wife and get a feel for the family she'd be working with. It's important to me that my key employees understand our values, he explained to her over the phone. Family, integrity, respect for honest work. I spent that morning getting ready with the kind of care I hadn't taken in years. Not to impress Maya. I was past needing her approval. But to honor the woman I'd become. I chose a cream silk dress, simple but elegant. Pearl earrings Thomas had given me for our 1-month anniversary. My wedding ring, a vintage piece that had belonged to his grandmother, worth more than I'd made in 5 years of housekeeping. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I barely recognized. Not because I'd changed so dramatically, but because I was finally seeing myself clearly. This wasn't about revenge. This was about revelation. At 3 o'clock I heard the doorbell. Maya's voice in the foyer, bright and nervous, talking to James, our butler. I'm here to meet Mrs. Harrington. Mr. Harrington thought it would be good for us to get acquainted. Of course, Miss Warren. She's expecting you in the drawing room. I positioned myself by the window, back to the door, looking out at the garden. I wanted her to see me in context first. Not as the woman who used to clean this house, but as the woman who now lived in it. Mrs. Harrington. Maya's voice was respectful, professional. I'm Maya Warren, your husband's new project coordinator. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. I turned around slowly and watched my daughter's world tilt off its axis. What would you do in that moment? Would you be kind? Would you be cruel? Comment below, because what I said next surprised even me. The color drained from Maya's face so completely I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. The gift basket she'd been carrying, some expensive arrangement of gourmet foods and wine, slipped from her hands and hit the marble floor with a dull thud. Mom. The word came out like a question, like she wasn't sure I was real. Smiled. Not cruel, not triumphant. Just peaceful. Hello, Maya. It's been a while. She looked around the room wildly, as if trying to make sense of the impossible. Her mother, her embarrassing uniformed invisible mother, standing in a drawing room that cost more than most people's houses, wearing clothes that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. I don't, how? When did you? When did I what, sweetheart? When did you marry him? 6 months ago. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. I paused, letting that sink in. You weren't invited. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Mom, I had no idea. If I'd known. If you'd known what? You would have called. You would have visited. You would have stopped being ashamed of me. I was never ashamed of you. I walked closer, my heels clicking softly on the marble I used to scrub on my hands and knees. Maya, do you remember what you said to me at your graduation dinner? Her eyes filled with tears. Mom, please. You said I embarrassed you, that people might get the wrong impression if they saw me in my work clothes. You asked me to be invisible. I was young. I was stupid. I didn't mean. Oh, but you did mean it. And you know what? You were right. She looked confused, hopeful. I was embarrassing. Not because I was a housekeeper. There's no shame in honest work. I was embarrassing because I was small. Because I let you make me small. I stopped directly in front of her, close enough to see the mascara starting to smudge under her eyes. But I'm not small anymore, am I? She shook her head, unable to speak. Your boss, my husband, he sees something in you. Says you're brilliant, innovative, that you have ideas that could change how we think about community development. Mom, I'm proud of you, Maya. I've always been proud of you, even when you weren't proud of me. The tears came then, ugly and desperate. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was horrible to you. I was selfish and cruel, and I don't deserve. No, I said quietly. You don't deserve this. But neither did I deserve your shame. I walked to the window, looking out at the life I'd built from nothing. You wanted me to understand that image matters. That perception is reality. That who you are matters less than who people think you are. I was wrong. Were you? 'Cause here we are. Same woman, different clothes. And suddenly, I'm worth knowing again. She was sobbing now, the kind of crying that comes from deep shame. How can you ever forgive me? I turned back to her, and for the first time in years, I saw my little girl instead of the stranger she'd become. Maya, forgiveness isn't something you earn. Something you accept. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know how. Start by remembering who taught you that love means sacrifice. And then ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice now? Was I too harsh? Too kind? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next changed everything between us. Maya worked for Thomas for 8 months. She was everything he'd said, brilliant, innovative, passionate about creating communities that served everyone, not just the wealthy. She threw herself into the work with a kind of intensity one recognized from her childhood, when she'd spend hours perfecting school projects. But she was different with me. Careful. Respectful in a way that felt almost formal. She'd call before visiting. She'd ask permission before bringing friends to company events. She'd introduce me as Mrs. Harrington, my boss's wife. Never as her mother. At first, I thought she was still ashamed. Then I realized, she was giving me the choice. The choice to claim her or not. The choice to be public about our relationship or keep it private. The choice she'd never given me before. One evening, Thomas and I were hosting a dinner for the City Planning Commission. Maya was there in her professional capacity, presenting her affordable housing proposal. She was magnificent, confident, articulate, passionate. Everything I'd raised her to be. During the cocktail hour, one of the commissioners asked her about her background. I was raised by a single mother, she said, her voice clear and proud. She taught me that home isn't about how much money you have. It's about the love and care you put into creating something beautiful. She looked directly at me across the room. She's the strongest woman I know. And I'm honored to be her daughter. Later that night, after the guests had gone home, Maya found me in the kitchen. Mom, can we talk? We sat at the same table where Thomas and I had shared our first real conversation. I've been thinking about what you said. About forgiveness. And I can't forgive myself for the years I wasted being ashamed of you. But I can promise you this. I will never again let anyone, including myself, make you feel small. I reached across the table and took her hand. Maya, you don't need to spend the rest of your life apologizing. You just need to spend it remembering. Remembering what? That love isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. And you're here now. That's enough. She squeezed my hand, and for the first time in years it felt like coming home. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And sometimes, the greatest gift is letting them find their way back to who they used to be. This is Clara's story. But it's also the story of every woman who's been made to feel small by someone she loves. Every mother who's sacrificed her dignity for her child's comfort. Every person who's learned that sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their choices. I didn't destroy Maya with revenge. I rebuilt myself with grace. And in the end, that was more powerful than any punishment I could have devised. Here at Boundless Revenge, we believe that the most elegant justice comes not from tearing others down, but from building ourselves up. If Clara's story moved you, subscribe to join our community of women who've learned that dignity is not negotiable. Next week, I'll share the story of a woman whose best friend stole her business idea, and how she turned betrayal into a billion-dollar empire. Until then, remember, you are not too small for the life you deserve. This is Boundless Revenge, where grace becomes power.